Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook. On this week's show, we take you to Arichat and Port Hawkesbury for two recent ceremonies held as part of the second annual National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. We also have some highlights from last week's meeting of Richmond Municipal Council. But we're going to concentrate for the first part of our show on the continuing cleanup from Hurricane Fiona here in the Strait area. You're going to hear from Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton and from Warden Amanda Mumberket about how they feel their municipalities and the various other stakeholders in hurricane cleanup have done. And you're also going to hear the story of a couple from Arichat, which is receiving regional and national attention and all kinds of random acts of generosity after their home of 20 years was destroyed by the high winds and heavy rains of Hurricane Fiona. But we begin with remarks from Richmond Warden Amanda Mumberket about how her county is dealing with the situation overall. Here is a quick conversation I had with her about Hurricane Fiona and its aftershocks following the latest regular monthly meeting of Richmond Municipal Council in Arichat. Richmond wasn't hit as hard as a lot of parts of Cape Breton, but obviously there were road washouts. There are a few different places around the county that were hit. A couple of people had damage to their homes. Lots of people still without power. Your thoughts on how the county has handled it and how people in this neck of the woods have weathered the storm?
Well, I have to say, I think I'm incredibly impressed with how our staff, as new as they are, especially in leadership roles here at the county, handled this weather event. Coming into the storm by midday Friday, it was still looking at that point like Richmond County was going to be ground zero for where it would make landfall, and so we were all very nervous. But knowing that we had those partnerships and the communications around the potential for comfort stations, I think something like 22 of them identified in the county if needed. Several were sort of stood up even by the local volunteer firefighters during the storm. So for people who had no place to go then, it's just been an incredible response from the staff here, from the volunteers in the community, and I couldn't be prouder. I'm thank goodness that we weren't hit as hard as some other areas. We're seeing the devastation in Sydney, and I know there's been similar devastation in like Pictou and Antigonish areas, and certainly the coverage out of Newfoundland has just been heartbreaking. All in all, very lucky, but at the same time, I recognize how difficult it is to operate without power, and hot water and heat, and it's getting to be cold this time of year. So certainly, if people need help, please reach out to a neighbor, reach out to your counselor, and we'll try to connect you to the services that you need. So.
Was I hearing wrong, or did you lose power and internet at your own place?
I certainly did. We were without power for a couple of days. Our power came on, I think, yesterday morning, but internet certainly has been sketchy. And of course, that the loss of power too impacts our cell phone signal, because of course we have a booster. And so it's been, as a warden, it's been a little tough because I felt a little incommunicado and not being able to see know what was going on. You worry so much, but certainly the staff had things well in hand here, and fortunately our power did come back on. So we're very lucky.
Okay. Can you give a couple of minutes to talk about the EMC coordinator? Because as you mentioned, that person is brand new.
Yeah.
First of all, who exactly is that person? And can you talk about the job they did, especially working with Troy?
Yeah, no, for sure. So our new EMC is Stephen Marcellus. He's from the Cleveland area, newish to Richmond County, and has a great background in emergency management and preparedness. So we were really fortunate. He started September 1st, and here we are on the middle of September having a major weather event. So it's been remarkable what he's been able to pull together in a short period of time. And both he and the CAO stood up our emergency operations center here and stayed here all weekend long to make sure that phones were being answered and that the place was open if people needed a place to go as well. So just a huge thank you to them, and definitely looking forward to working with Stephen now on additional kind of levels of emergency preparedness and fire services and all that good stuff. So it's great to have someone with experience and passion in the role, for sure.
Quickly, can you talk about how you feel the restoration effort for Nova Scotia Power is going in Richmond? Obviously, they have big fish to fry in different parts of Cape Breton and different parts of mainland Nova Scotia, but your thoughts on the work that they're doing here?
Yeah, I mean, like I have to say, if you're out driving around, you will see the Nova Scotia power linesmen. They are all out there, and they are working so hard to get things back online. And you know, you have to understand with the electrical grid and getting the power back on. It's a complicated process, and the needs of the many sometimes outweigh the needs of the few. And like I said, I know how frustrating that can be. We've certainly been in that situation. I think the longest we've had a loss of power at our house is something like 6 or 7 days. And so I definitely understand people's frustration and the need to get that power back on quickly. But I can see, it's not hard to tell how hard that they are working. We've had crews in from, like I said, Quebec, other locations to, they were making sure that they had as many boots on the ground as possible, and that's very much appreciated.
Right. Road washouts in northern Richmond County, up in St. George's Channel, West Bay Road as well too, and Councillor Digdon bringing up Oban as well. Your thoughts on basically getting this fixed? I mean, obviously it won't happen in the short term, but have conversations begun between the municipality and the Department of Public Works to be able to get this done?
Oh, definitely. The washouts, certainly the one in St. George's Channel was a very dramatic situation, and we're very, very fortunate that no one was hurt there. So definitely, I've certainly been in touch with our MLA, and we're going to be doing whatever we can to kind of support that work going forward. At the end of the day, these are provincial roads, and so it's out of our hands somewhat, but we certainly will be advocating for quick fixes on those washout areas, because they're critical arteries for people to be able to get back and forth, right? So we need to make sure that they're taken care of.
No examination of Hurricane Fiona's path through Richmond County can happen here on Telile 24/7 without giving some special attention to a couple who lost their home in Arichat. Janasta and Vincent Chesson had lived in their trailer on the high road in the community for over 20 years. However, this is not going to be the case in that current location, as Fiona's high winds and heavy rains ripped through the Chessons' home of many years, leaving it destroyed and leaving them with a heavy price to pay given that their home was uninsured. However, the efforts of several people, family, friends, and complete strangers, both here in Richmond County and beyond, are leading towards a brighter future for the Chessons and for their family. Over the next several minutes, you're going to hear directly from Janasta and Vincent Chesson, as well as Janasta Chesson's sister, Jenny Purdy, who is leading a lot of the fundraising efforts on the local and internet levels. We warn you that some of what you're about to see may be triggering for some of our viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Here is the story of Janasta and Vincent Chesson.
We've been here 20 years.
20 years, July.
Our son was 5 when we moved here, so just before he started school.
I had texted my sister earlier that day. She was at work, and I texted her. I just had this gut feeling that Hurricane Fiona could impact us the way that they said that it was supposed to.
My wife Janessa got off work at 7 o'clock Friday evening, and when we came home the wind started picking up more and more, so we
had already started to leak.
Yeah,
in places.
We got our animals and we went down to her father's.
Around 9:30, she texted that they were ready. She called me that they were ready, and we came up, and even at that time you could feel the wind starting to pick up, and I just felt really uneasy.
And the next morning when we came up, I was driving her to work, and we realized what happened. It was just devastating. And our neighbor across the road, Mitch David, he heard a rumble and tearing, and he come out, checked all around his house, and then when he noticed our roof was coming off, he watched the whole thing. And
he came to the door banging because he thought we were in the house, and he wanted to help us get out, but we had already left.
Yeah, and like I say, that happened early Saturday morning, around 1:30 Saturday morning.
And then the next morning, my brother-in-law Vince was going to take Janasta to work for 7 o'clock. But when they made the hill up here, it looked like everything was okay. But as they got a little closer, they realized that the roof was in their neighbor's yard.
We pulled up the lane here, and as we were coming up, we could see that all our fencing was still intact, and the shed was still intact. And so we thought, okay, it's going to be okay. Everything is still standing. And then when we made the turn and came driving up here, we could see the roof. And we pulled in, and it was devastating. When we opened the front door, the rain was just pouring in everywhere, so we could see light through the roof in at least 3 different places at that point.
Yeah.
It was devastating. I didn't even know what to do.
That's when Gymnastic called me, hysterical on the phone, that they had stopped in. The roof was gone, and in the neighbor's yard, everything inside the ceiling was caving in from the weight of the water, and it was exposed to the elements all night through all that rain. And we got up. I don't think too many people slept that night, but I had just dozed off for a little while, and that's when she phoned me.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe our home was gone.
We just sat in the driveway for like 5 minutes, just crying.
Worked so hard over the years to have it and keep it, and in a couple of hours it was gone.
I just wanted to get to her. I knew I needed to be there with her, and she just needed someone, and I knew that. So that was my only concern. It's like I told her, I'm on my way. Just hold on. We're gonna get through this.
Right here is what used to be the roof on our trailer. And now it's laying on the ground. I was just glad the roof didn't land on our neighbor Carlina's house. Could have been a lot worse than what it is.
And we realized that it's not just a roof. Everything was so damaged inside, it wasn't repairable. We knew at that point, with the water coming in like a river, that inside their house, that there was no repairing it.
It was much later in the afternoon before we were able to get up, and my sisters and their spouses came up, and there wasn't much that could be saved, because by then, stuff had started to collapse and come in, and everything was soaked. And it just gets worse each day.
What you're seeing here is my ceiling on the floor and a gaping hole in the roof. And, well, if it wasn't for these straps here, the roof would probably come down, because there's nothing left to it. I mean, it's just devastation. I mean, everything is ruined. You can even see all the water going up the walls here, and the couch is ruined. Even this, our fireplace, it's gone. How can you take something out of your house that's everything is moldy? You just can't.
With all the rain that we've gotten, the ceilings are caving in more and more each day. The light fixtures are just hanging by wires.
Floors are starting to warp.
Our beds are just soaked. There's mold growing everywhere.
There's a hole in the roof here. The roof is banged up. The ceiling's banged up.
And there. And in the closet, there's a big hole.
Yeah. And the floor is soaked.
Yeah.
You're seeing mold around here already, are you?
Yeah. I get, like, a lot of people come in and say, well, you'll move on, and, it was an older trailer. It can be replaced.
But it was our home.
But that's not what it was to us. It's hard when you wake up every morning and you're not in your own home and you're not in your own bed. And to know that you're never going to spend another night here, like, it's it. It's over.
Down the hall is pretty much the same thing. A lot of water damage. Once the roof came off, the water started rushing in, and it hasn't stopped since.
What goes to your mind when you walk into this room?
Never being able to come back in here again. Not my wife, not my grandson, not my son. It's just gone. Everything's gone. Still standing here, but it's rubble. It's what it is.
We are in what was our son's bedroom and is now our grandson's, or was. We take our grandson every second weekend.
Yeah, he's got his own room in the trailer. No water damage, just moisture and
the dampness.
But
the roof, when it ripped off, it stopped.
It stopped
right above his room.
Above his room.
Do you think that might be a sign?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to believe that it is.
We gotta believe in something.
We at least got his toys and his crib out before the mold and the moisture set in, so that's something. I still see my son running down the hall on Christmas mornings And I still see my grandson first thing in the morning just coming with his little pitter-patter. And that's the things that we see. We don't see what everybody else does. Our grandson likes to see the cars go by, and every truck that goes by, he goes...
Yeah, and when our son was living here, he always had his friends stay over, weeks at a time. There was always 2 or 3 of them here. And that's all gone now.
When the Chessons' grandson saw previous TV footage of his grandparents and their destroyed home, he confirmed that it was indeed his beloved Meme and Pepe, and patted his heart near his shoulder. It's this kind of love and support from family members and friends here in Almadam and around the region that are keeping Janasta and Vincent Chesson going as they attempt to look towards the future.
That's what we keep holding on to.
That's the only thing that's getting us through.
A place for our grandchildren to come back to, because we also have a granddaughter who's only ever been here once. Yeah. Because she's only 2 months old.
The support for the Chessons isn't just emotional. Benefits and fundraisers are taking place for the couple, not only here in Almadam, but across the region, extending as far as Antigonish and New Glasgow. As well, a GoFundMe page for Janasta and Vincent Chesson, set up by their nephew Cody Party, originally had goals of $5,000 and then $10,000. As of the morning of Thursday, October the 6th, that fundraising total had exceeded both of those original goals and was sitting just shy of $17,000.
I think the thing that came through the most is the community. The community stepped up right away, giving them what they feel they need, monetary donations, donations of even, people coming in to haul away what they can't use anymore, which is the whole thing. And that's a big expense if you look at, that in itself.
It's amazing how people are given.
They
don't
no
know
words.
what it means to us.
There are no words to express the gratitude.
If it wasn't for that, I don't know what we'd do.
This community is amazing. And not just the community, people we don't even know. Like total strangers who've wanted to remain anonymous. That comes right from the heart. Not wanting any publicity for their kindness and compassion, just wanting here, right from the heart, just giving right from the heart.
And the messages on the GoFundMe page, it's one man said, there are people out there who care. You may not know who they are, but they are out there, and it gives you some hope and appreciation for the small things, which aren't so small.
No gesture is too small for the Chessons at this point. Vince had to leave his job working on tugboats 7 years ago due to injury. He is eligible for the Canada Pension Plan and is receiving funds from that initiative. As per Janasta, she works as a continuing care assistant at St. Anne's Community and Nursing Care Centre in Arichat. Further complicating financial matters for the couple, their trailer, their home of 20 years, was not insured.
Right now, we don't really have any resources to look at rebuilding anything right now. We don't know where we're going to be living long term. It's a lot of unknown.
Everything is still up in the air.
In the meantime, Janasta Chesson's sister Jenny Party is doing her part. In addition to her organizing of a major fundraiser at the Acadiaville Community Centre in West Arichat, beginning at 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, October the 15th, and running through the day, Party is also working through everything required from a disaster relief standpoint in terms of filling out applications to the provincial and federal governments to get the Chessons the additional help they need.
The application is definitely extensive. You have to have pictures and proof of what you had before and after the fact. So we're still in the process of trying to get, invoices for, say, a fridge, a stove, or the bed, or the television. And, in the grand scheme of things, if you thought this would happen, this kind of tragedy, you would save all that stuff. I think that's a lesson for all of us, even those like myself with insurance. It kind of plants that seed. Okay, I really gotta, be able to prove that I have this stuff. So, and I think that application is going to take a little bit more time. The Red Cross, we also, my son Cody did an online application for that, so we're waiting to hear back for that.
Even as these efforts all come together, and even as they continue to emotionally and mentally process what's happened to their home of 20 years, Janesta and Vincent Chesson aren't blaming anybody or anything for what's happened, and they're grateful for what they've been able to keep and what could come in the future.
Never lost no animals. We never lost our lives. Everything was, a home eventually can be replaced.
I don't really think of why us.
Yeah, it just happened.
It's
just something that happened.
Mother Nature.
Yeah, nobody had control over it.
There's no rhyme or reason to Mother Nature. If I can get something big enough to take my grandson back to, that's all I want. I don't need anything big. I don't need anything fancy. We just need a space
something
for
with
us,
a roof over our head,
our animals, and our grandson.
Now we're going to shift our coverage of Hurricane Fiona's aftermath to the town of Port Hawkesbury. CAO Terry Doyle gave an update on how the town has dealt with the hurricane during this week's regular monthly meeting of Town Council at the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre's Shannon studio. So we're going to hear from CAO Doyle in just a moment, and we'll also hear from Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton about how the town of Port Hawkesbury reached out to neighbouring municipalities in the run-up to the storm and how it's provided support to residents of those municipalities in the days past.
We've had an exercise last spring where we utilized the emergency management plan for Hurricane Fiona. So after utilizing the plan, making notes and looking at areas of improvement, we're now going through the emergency management plan for amendments and review by council. So we'll have some things coming back at the committee of whole, and then there'll be a follow-up for amendments to the plan for consideration.
This storm was something that the town of Port Hawkesbury and our emergency management stakeholders took absolutely extremely seriously. There was extensive planning work put in to the emergency management plan, just from where the command center was going to be located, what would trigger the need for comfort center or centers set up for residents, a plan for public works to constantly monitor the ongoing elements of the storm and certainly the outcomes or any potential damage. So we were extremely ready. Like, I am fully confident that the staff, town staff, senior staff, public works, they were ready to go.
We have been very fortunate in the town and our surrounding area, our immediate surrounding area, with respect to the effects. And we have reached out to our neighboring municipalities who were less fortunate and did offer support. We've had some utilization of this facility. Our staff has been very, very gracious in offering services and visiting hockey teams and families of visiting hockey teams and a number of in any way that we can. And have that offer support is still out there in the longer term.
We will continue to keep the doors open as long as people are requiring any kind of assistance with charging devices during our regular Civic Center hours, as well as access to a hot shower. So we're definitely going to stay open as long as it's needed. But I do understand that Nova Scotia Power is picking away at some of those areas that are still have persistent power outages. So we will still continue to provide that service as long as it's being used.
So we did have a significant amount of rainfall, which we're very happy that our systems were able to handle. Our Public Works Department did a significant amount of preparation, including vacuuming out and cleaning of catch basins, and monitored and responded to calls throughout the night and the next day. So again, very fortunate, very happy with the work that Jason McMillan and our public works staff have completed through that process as well.
But even as the eye passed, and in that second leg of the storm, that last leg of the storm, like we still weren't letting our guard down. Like we were ready, and I think, it's just one of those things that you do have to always take seriously. And again, we were super fortunate. And in the wake of the storm, like, isn't it wonderful that we were in a position
to be able to extend aid and help to some of our neighboring municipalities. And I know full well that were we in the same position as some of our surrounding municipalities were, that same help would have been extended to us. So I mean, it's the right thing to do. Like if our neighbors, we work closely together, and in times like these, like it's important to pull together. Prior to the storm, I certainly took time to reach out to all of our mayors and wardens and chiefs in the region, just to kind of wish them well, just do a little check-in, if there's any information that they have to share and vice versa, just with regard to the ongoing progress of the storm, which was important to make sure that we have those open lines of communication. Certainly the mayor CBRM, Mayor McDougall, reached out prior to the storm and said, listen, if you guys get hit hard, let us know how we can help. And I said absolutely the same. I had the opportunity to talk to Warden McIsaac as well. One thing that's pretty critical to both our municipalities is the Canso Causeway. So, if I'm aware of any pending permanent closures due to the high winds, I would certainly let her know so she can let her residents know, and vice versa. So those lines of communication are extremely important. And then post-storm, we certainly, with the damage that ensued with CBRM, just reaching out to see, is there something that we can do to help? Antigonish County, they're a really close neighbor on the other side of the Strait of Canso. With their prolonged power outages, we certainly were happy to open up the Civic Center as a comfort center for charging or for taking showers, whatever have you. So at the end of the day, I guess the message to all of our neighbors is that, if we're in a position to help, we're happy to do so because we're all in this together.
Not only were Port Hawkesbury and Richmond County both cleaning up from the limited damage from Hurricane Fiona, the two municipalities also marked the second annual National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. One of the ceremonies to honor this special day took place on Thursday morning, September the 29th, in the run-up to the actual day, and the second took place in the afternoon of September 30th. That's where we start our coverage, in Port Hawkesbury, right in front of the Civic Centre, where an orange ribbon ceremony was held, led by Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton and an Indigenous activist from the town who is also a survivor of the so-called Indian Day School programs, Bryson Syllaboy. We begin with the mayor right now.
So welcome everyone to the town of Port Hawkesbury on behalf of Port Hawkesbury Town Council. We are here today in recognition and celebration of Truth and Reconciliation Day and also Orange Shirt Day. Bryson Syllaboy is here with me, but before we start, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral territory of Mi'kmaq, specifically here on the island of Unama'ki. We are here not with the surrender of lands, but how we grow our relationship through peace and treaty friendship treaties. And Bryson is here with us today. So we have two items that we will be doing today. The first is going to be tying orange ribbons in honor and remembrance of both murdered and missing Indigenous women, as well as the mass graves that have been discovered across Canada with Indigenous children and adults, as I understand it. So tie the orange ribbon to show your commitment to truth and reconciliation. And we actually invite citizens of Port Hawkesbury and the surrounding areas, if you would like to come and get an orange ribbon and tie a ribbon to any of the trees in front of the Civic Center, you're more than welcome to come. Truth and reconciliation is a journey, and everybody has a role to play on that journey. So we all have a role to figure out, how do we continue to improve our relationships together? How do we continue to learn about the history, both shared and also the time memorial history of our First Nation people? And also just to learn, how can we take action on reconciliation? I like to call that reconciliation. So what can we do?
I'm just talking about how to be a better ally for for Indigenous causes. So basically, like, the biggest thing to be a great ally is not to think about the whole picture, you know, like, because that could be overwhelming. Think about the small things that you can do in your everyday life, you know, like calling out somebody who's being racist or anti-Indigenous, learning about the residential school systems in Canada, you know, reading the Truth and Reconciliation final report and the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples, women and peoples final report as well. You know, all those little actions, day-to-day actions, really help to enact change and to bring us a better, closer settler Indigenous allyship. I know how important this day is because, you know, we have to remember what our ancestors did, or what even our parents and uncles and aunts went through in the schools. And I am also a Indian Day School survivor. So, you know, like, it's not ancient history. The last residential school closed in 1996. So it's great that, you know, people recognize this day and know the importance of this day.
And I would like to dedicate this ribbon to Margaret Poulette, a dear friend of mine who recently passed away, and to all of her family. Margaret Poulette was a champion and also a residential school survivor, and she was absolutely key in helping us to add the ancestral language to the Canso Causeway Bridge. So when you now pass the causeway, it says Jalasi Unamagi, which is the original name of Cape Breton Island, and Margaret was key in making that happen, which was a huge act of truth and reconciliation for the province of Nova Scotia to be able to do that. Margaret, this ribbon is for you. I love you, Margaret.
I would like to dedicate to my mom, who went to the residential school.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, for the second consecutive September 30th, orange ribbons were placed on trees just outside the Port Hawkesbury Civic Centre. Only a day and a half earlier, in Arichat at the Richmond Municipal Building, Warden Amanda Mumberket led a similar ceremony honoring truth and reconciliation efforts in her municipality.
I want to just begin by extending regrets from Chief Wilbert and members of his council. They've got everything from cases of COVID to some pretty critical illness that they're dealing with in their community today. And so I promised them that we would take some pictures and send them a little summary afterwards, and we'll see some of them later today as well. So I just wanted to kind of start off by saying that I believe this is our first flag raising for truth and reconciliation in the county of Richmond, and it brings me great pleasure, to be able to honor this day in partnership with our neighbors in Budledeck and other communities in Unamagi. For over 100 years, approximately 150,000 Indigenous children were torn from their communities, from their families, and forced to attend church-run Indian residential schools. These were inhumane institutions where many suffered abuse, malnutrition, and neglect. More than 4,000 children are believed to have died, and recently, of course, in the last number of years, we've seen increasing numbers of unmarked and undocumented graves being discovered on or near the sites of those residential schools. Last year, the federal government designated September 30th as the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation to honor the victims of this injustice and tragic legacy. So today we will raise a flag to honor the survivors, their families, and communities, and all who have been impacted by the legacy of the Indian residential school system. Tomorrow our flags will fly at half-mast, and our office will be closed to observe and reflect on what is a dark and tragic history in a chapter in our shared history. September 30th is also recognized as Orange Shirt Day. Orange Shirt Day began in Williams Lake, BC in 2013 at the St. Joseph Mission Residential School. It was a commemorating event and has since spread across the country. Orange Shirt Day specifically honors survivor Phyllis Webstad's story of having her new orange shirt taken from her when she was on her first day of school at the mission. Today we honor her story and the stories of so many residential school survivors from all across Canada and from right here in Unamagi and Richmond County.
Next week, we'll also mark October 4th as the National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. This is a time to focus on the critical actions and transformative change needed to end all forms of gender-based sexualized and racialized violence impacting Indigenous women, girls, and other individuals. We recognize the land upon which we work and live is the unceded territory and the ancestral homeland of the Mi'kmaq Nation. Our relationship is based on a series of sacred peace and friendship treaties, and we must support each other in learning and building understanding from the terrible truths of Indian residential schools and from missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and to build a path forward together where no one gets left behind. I think we can learn much from Elder Albert Marshall's two-eyed seeing approach to inquiry and problem solving, that sees from one eye with the strengths and knowledges and ways of knowing of Indigenous peoples, and then from the other eye with the strengths of Western knowledges and ways of knowing, and learning to use both of those eyes together for the benefit of all. So my hope is that we can work together with Budladek and First Nations community across Unama'ki to strengthen community ties and at a local level to find ways to work towards the goals of the Truth and Reconciliation Report and its calls to action, along with the calls to justice of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls.
Richmond County has attempted to increase broadband internet service for several communities around the county for many years. And the county thought that it may have struck on the right combination to do that by joining forces with the municipality of the County of Inverness and also with local Indigenous communities to make a pitch to develop Nova Scotia and see if it could access funds from the province and Ottawa. However, that program fell through, so now the county is trying to figure out ways to lobby Cape Breton-Canso MP Mike Kellaway and other members of the federal and provincial governments to access the funds needed to get internet access all the way around the county. I spoke to Richmond Warden Amanda Mumbercat about the situation following the latest regular monthly meeting of Richmond County Council. Here's what she had to say. Coming out of Committee of the Whole, you had mentioned at the time that there was a partnership in place between Richmond, Inverness, and at least one Indigenous community, and that fell through. Can you give us a sense on whether that could still lead to another partnership and essentially where we go from here?
Yeah, well, certainly we would be on board with that. So what had happened was that partnered application was submitted to the Universal Broadband Fund, which is a federal program, and it was not successful. Certainly we would be very interested in either resubmitting or changing or, adapting to whatever criteria the program, has in the future, or whatever priorities they deem fit. But the main thing is at this point that we advocate with the federal government to recapitalize, to put more money into that fund so that we can continue to apply to it and hopefully be successful in the future, because broadband remains one of our top priorities here in the county. We know we need it to level the playing field for people, whether they're looking for, whether it's employment related or education related. We need better access to the internet, and so we are going to be communicating that to MP Kellaway in a letter. And certainly he and I have already discussed it verbally, and he'll be looking forward to receiving that letter, I know.
And now we're going to share some recent discussion from the latest regular monthly meeting of Richmond Municipal Council to help give you a better idea on how your municipal councillors and municipal staff are working together to try to deal with issues that have come up in the community. We're going to begin with a question of whether money should be spent on refurbishing the council chambers in Arichat, specifically to deal with sound systems and with providing internet images to municipal councillors during the actual council meetings. It turns out that the price tag for one such refurbishment could be over $70,000, and that's caught several municipal officials, including Warden Amanda Mumbercat, by surprise. So here is the raw footage from that particular discussion from the latest meeting of Richmond Municipal Council in Arichat.
I definitely am experiencing some sticker shock on the pricing. So, I guess maybe I'll ask Troy. I don't know if you want to speak to it. I know you guys had obtained the quote back from.
Yeah, it took a lot of effort from our Director of Public Works to get this quote. Subsequent weeks of saying we've been waiting since before the summer on this one. So we again, this was a more council-led project, and I think it was with my predecessor, and I don't have a whole lot of notes on what was discussed other than what I saw in the quote. So I really can't help you a whole lot unless we have a conversation about what was absolutely necessary that we need to address right away, and then maybe we can get something re-quoted or go to other suppliers once I know what the absolute needs are. Because maybe if you narrow the scope on what we do, maybe it doesn't have to be just this one supplier, we can look at others. So I'm coming in at a left field on this one, and not a whole lot to go on, but by all means, I see the monitors, I see the sound system. You know, there's opportunities for upgrades. What was the priority? What was driving it in the first place? Because I've missed these initial conversations with you guys.
Yeah, and maybe I'll start, councillors, and if you feel I'm missing anything, so it just kind of refreshing my memory on this was being driven by, of course, COVID was requiring us to do more hybrid type meetings. The sound system in here, as we just had trouble with at the beginning of the meeting, right? It doesn't work well. When it does work, there tends to be a lot of feedback, which is incredibly difficult to proceed with. And so we have been jury rigging things as much as we can. The sets here, the microphones here are not functioning, and that's the whole kind of sequential, you know, clicking on to allow people's mics to light up at certain times, et cetera. You know, that was a bit of a problem. Certainly part of the driver on this too was from an accessibility perspective. Some of our committee members, you know, may need to be, you know, or public participation in meetings. We want to make sure that people can participate if they can't be here physically. So it's kind of a democratic engagement, accessibility, and just frankly, just a functional system that we're looking for. At the end of the day, I think what I've seen Backman VidCom price is a Cadillac version, which I think would be really helpful if we had a council of 20 or 25 people. I feel that for 5 of us, we probably don't need the sequential clicker. Like there are pieces we can take out of that quote and still end up with something that has just basic audio-visual functionality. So I don't know, councillors, if I'm missing anything from your knowledge of the discussions. I think that
Instead of the 55-inch TV, if we go like with a 48, does it cost?
I didn't really understand what the heck the thing said. You know, like it was like a lot of very technical mumbo jumbo to me. But I would agree, and so I'm just wondering if it may be worthwhile for you to have a conversation. You know, for you and Troy perhaps to have a conversation with them, just to like, is this the Cadillac version? And if it is, you know, what if we just took it down one step? What would that look like?
Right.
Yeah, to like
because you know, as I looked at the, you know, the categories, you know, I think you know, council displays are probably the only thing in that whole thing that as a category we could probably do without. We can use our computers. We all have our own computer. You know, but that was such a small portion of the quote. I mean, the quote is 50% greater than what we budgeted.
Yeah.
You know, and at the end of the day, if they come back and they say, look, the best price you're going to get is whatever, then we need to look at, you know, what did we plan to use in our capital plan? I just sort of looked at the list. What did we plan? And then is there something that's not happening that we may be able to rejig that? But I would like to get it to a number that makes sense and is what we would use.
Right.
But we need to do something.
We do need to do something.
We're now at a point, there's no options.
Yeah.
So what was that number, Deputy Warden, that we had?
Well, our budget was 60,000 that we put in our budget this year, right? And I mean, their quota was like 96, and then we get back like half the tax or something. I think, is that right, Jason? I don't know.
The net cost would be 87,352.
Right. Yeah. So
87.
Yeah. So that's 27,000 over budget. Again, we may have room to wiggle there, but to wiggle for the sake of the Cadillac, I don't think is worth it.
Right.
But to wiggle for the sake of maybe
Right.
The GMC.
Something that just is going to do what we need it to do.
Yeah, the GMC version or the Chevrolet
Well,
version.
I'm not going to say anything about, I shouldn't have said the word Cadillac. That's what I'm saying.
No, but, yeah, I understand where you're coming
but
from.
I get, yeah. So I would love to, for one or both of you to maybe have a conversation with them to make sure that they're not quoting us like the top of the top, and maybe they're not. But we need to know that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm happy to do that, Troy. Maybe you and I connect with them and.
Excellent.
Yeah, okay. So we'll leave it at that. We'll go back and look for a requote. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, like I said, sticker shock on that one, so hopefully we can get to something a little more reasonable.
We've once again reached that time of year when Richmond Municipal Council submits a list to the provincial government concerning J-class or secondary roads in the municipality and which roads should be considered for provincial funding to be able to get them repaired and upgraded. Here is some raw footage from the latest regular monthly council meeting for Richmond, which took place on September 26th in Arichat. This way you get to see what kind of conversation goes into deciding which J-class roads should go on the list that goes to the provincial government. Here is that discussion at Richmond Municipal Council chambers in Arichat right now.
I will note some changes I made to the estimates.
Lots of asterisks next to that.
Last year when we initially applied, we had conversations with provincial officials, and the cost for resurfacing paved road, I believe, was approximately $230,000 per kilometer, and for paving a gravel road, I believe we had estimated $320,000 per kilometer. Now, based on their tender for the one road that was approved, Langley Lane, their estimate for the work was $400,000 per kilometer. However, the cost actually came in at about $700,000 per kilometer, so they haven't yet decided if they will carry out that work or not. But in light of their estimate of $400,000 per kilometer, I did change all of our estimates for the 4 roads that were identified last year. So in the table, you'll see new estimates, including municipal contribution, based on that $400,000 per kilometer to pave a gravel road, and I used $300,000 per kilometer for repaving an asphalt road. Now, those numbers could be off by a fair margin once the tenders come in, but I felt it appropriate to increase our estimates of last year.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, even at the 400,000 mark, it's uncertain as to whether or not it would be coming in at that level, right? I mean, it's a little bit of guesswork. Yeah. But I appreciate your work on this, Chris. Thank you very much. Councillors, do you have any questions about? Yeah, Deputy Warden?
I have a couple of comments, I guess. So one is regarding Langley Lane that was previously approved by council, and when we did make that motion, we had investigated whether or not, if the estimate came back too high, whether or not we were able to pull out of the plan. And my understanding was at that time that we could, and I think, it sounds like maybe we're waiting for the province to pull the trigger on not doing it, but I'm wondering if there's an appetite at the table for us to pull the trigger on not doing it. Although some residents on that lane were quite happy to have it done previously, they've kind of expressed some concerns at having it done once they've given it some more thought, I think. And so I just wonder if that's something we can do. So that's one item. And then the second item, I think we had previously sort of, I thought that we had numbered the ones that we thought were like most important to least important. And I guess I would just like to advocate for Marchand Lane. It's in quite bad shape. There are 7 residences there. It's pretty small. I know, Chris, that you've commented that the cost could be quite a bit higher because it's short. But I wonder if it was on the slate, and then if something was in the area being done, then if it could get slid in. So just 2 totally different things, but 2 comments.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Warden. So, councillors, maybe we'll address the first point is on the Langley Lane issue. I mean, the likelihood that the province is going to want to go ahead with this is pretty low because of the incredibly high cost differential.
Yeah.
Are we in a position at this stage? I mean, it would be quite a chunk out of our funds, right? Much more than what we anticipated.
Yeah. So, like Deputy Warden said, I don't think we have to sit back and wait for them to make a decision. I feel comfortable saying we're not we're not ready to move, even if they come to move forward, we're not ready to move forward, so it's just as easy to send them a letter, I would think, or whatever the process is, to let them know that we're no longer interested in, at that cost of putting Langley Lane on the table. That would be my motion, I guess, to remove it from the,
Okay. So
if
you're
a
making
motion is required.
Yeah, I think we would need a motion, yeah, for sure. So you're making the motion to notify the province that we no longer wish to proceed with the Langley Lane project?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and then, I mean, in that, you know, Councillor Sampson is just saying here, like, it shouldn't be on the list probably anyway. And it, like, this list that we're looking to forward to.
23.
Yeah, right? I mean, it was already approved, so I think it doesn't need to be on the list regardless. But in addition to that, I think, you know, the motion that's been put forward makes sense to remove it from the plan.
Okay. Could I have a seconder on the motion from Councillor Digdon?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. So any further discussion?
So just for clarity, Madam Warden, we're going to be on the amended motion to add the part that it be removed from the J-Class road list for 2023 as well. Is that correct? Is that the amendment to Councillor Digdon's motion?
No, our submission, right? So we have that chart. From what the Director of Public Works has provided us last year's submission. And so my understanding from you, as we sort of started this conversation, was that we would be submitting that same list of roads this year for our 23-24. But Langley Lane doesn't make sense to be on there because they had approved it for 22-23.
Right.
So first of all, our submission should only include
those
and I guess the question is, should it include all those? So maybe we need to talk about that separately.
Yeah, I feel like that.
I feel like
it's a separate kind of motion.
Thing.
In the meantime,
you and I are saying the same thing, though.
Yeah.
It just doesn't become part of the submission, and that's on his amendment. Okay. I think we're good.
No, it wouldn't be on his amendment. So the motion that Councillor Digdon made was to notify the province that we don't wish to proceed with the Langley Lane project.
Which was approved for 22-23.
22-23.
Right.
And now
Yeah.
you don't want it on the list at all.
Right, but
for
we'll
our
take care of
submission
that
for
in a
20.
we'll take care of that in a next motion because we'll just approve the whole list.
Perfect.
Right?
Good.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
wanted to
Okay.
make sure I
So
get your
I
motions
second
right.
the original motion. Yeah.
So any further discussion on the current project? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried. So now we'll get into the list. To
current
your
list.
point, the current
Right.
list for next fiscal. So again, the three roads are Lobster Plant Road, Sampson Road, Marchand Lane. I think we're agreeing that we'll remove Langley Lane from there. Do we want to proceed with those other three to get the cost estimates from the province on them?
And do you want to move up Marshall Lane, you said?
Well, yeah. I mean, in all honesty, as I look at the list, it's really the only one I think we should be putting forward. But I mean, that's my opinion. I'm just. Well, the price is.
Yeah.
You know, we already established that the price for Lobster Plant Road. I think part of the discussion we had last year about that one was we wanted to see what it would cost.
Right.
Right? And so last year's estimate was 800 and some odd thousand. It would be more.
Yeah.
And we're not willing to put, you know, almost $500,000 into that road. I think we've discussed that already.
Right.
So putting it on again doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Okay.
You know, and then Sampson Road, I guess I would open that. I think it was you that brought that forward, Councillor Sampson. But again, quite a bit of money there.
Okay, so the proposal, I guess, from the Deputy Warden is that we would take Lobster Plant Road off, Langley Lane off, leave Marchand Lane on, and potentially Sampson Road?
But move Marchand to the top.
I'd like to move Marchand to the top.
Yeah. So.
I wouldn't say move Marchand to the top, then we put them in the list in order. Sampson's Road was previously ahead of Marchand Lane, so.
Are they looking for priority?
I don't think this was our priority list.
Oh, sorry.
No, I don't think. I think they're just listed.
Yeah,
It
we
was.
did have a priority list, and I don't recall, but I don't think this was.
And I only said that because if this is the priority list, I don't feel that we should be jumping.
Okay.
Okay.
one above the other.
Yeah, Langley was
likely
number one
it would be
before,
able
so
to be
that's
looked
not a
up
priority.
Right.
Last year, anyway, we would have record of that.
Yeah.
We have it written as it was presented in the motion. Lobster Plant Road was council's first choice.
Oh.
Langley Lane was second, Sampson's Road third, and Marchand
Okay.
Lane fourth.
That's all corrected, okay.
So in saying that, I guess I would go back to my previous statement where I don't believe we should jump Marchand Lane ahead of Sampson's Road, although I do feel both we should look at. One thing I don't know if it's an option available to the county or to the province, but I know that the province outsources all the time. So I don't know if it's an option for us to contact the paving company and then see if the province would still go 50-50 on the cost, if it's an overpave or a repave,
Which is what Marchand Lane is.
which is what Marchand Lane is.
And it's gotten substantially worse since last year, so I'm still saying it should.
Yeah.
So when you say the province goes 50-50 on these things, like
Yes.
if there was other funding announced or available, that would,
So so it's a J-class program through that the funds would come through. That's why we can't take the funds from, say, Langley Lane paving and put it into
no,
other
yeah,
things on
right.
Langley. Like, you know what I mean? Like it
That's
has
right,
to be
'cause
specifically
that's the problem.
for
They're
that.
still in bad shape, but unfortunately, the money we had allocated can't go to doing
Right.
ditching and all
It
the other
can't,
things
yeah.
they need.
Right.
We're still gonna need to advocate for that.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that what, like, so when you're saying other sources of funds, I'm not aware of any that would
Yeah.
apply to this type of project, but
okay.
yeah. Okay, so that leaves us, I think, still with both Sampson Road and Marchand Lane. Maybe I will put you a little bit on the spot, Councillor Brent Sampson, like on your thoughts on Sampson Road, the current condition.
I'd still like to see it remain on the list just
Okay.
because it's been a long time. There's been little to no maintenance.
Okay.
I do understand though, sometimes a paved road can be in far worse condition
Mhm.
and a lot harder. It's not like you can just run a grader over it and
Yeah.
fix it up. So, I'm, agreeable to changing the order if need be. I'd rather not remove it from the list
Okay.
entirely.
Okay. So would we be in agreement to request that staff submit Marchand Lane and Sampson Road in that priority to the province?
I wonder, I don't like to see Lobster Plant Road, considering all the, I guess, all the employees that work there, again, I don't know if it's something that we can look at a three-way split between the industry that's out there at the end and the County of Richmond and the province. I do know that when it comes to, upkeep and maintenance, they look towards the province, but they also do some of their own. Again, I don't know if that's something that the Lobster Plant would even consider, or if it's an avenue for us to consider.
And that's what I meant when it comes to other
Oh,
funding.
okay,
You know what I mean? Like
okay.
if there was
I wasn't
interest to
picking up what you were
invest
laying
more or less.
down.
I shouldn't have said
Okay.
funding, but invest,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
there was potential for investment there from,
Okay.
I mean, it benefits them the greatest, so therefore
Well, why don't we check with the province to see if they can, if they would accept a three-way
Yeah.
kind of financing plan under this program?
I would still like to go, as the deputy warden stated, at this point, then I guess Marchand Lane and Councillor Sampson had no issue.
Yeah.
So Marchand Lane and Sampson Road and Lobster Plant Road.
Okay.
In that order, but
And with the caveat that the Lobster Plant Road would be looking into,
Right.
could a potential
Correct.
three-partner agreement be reached under the program? Okay, thank you. I wasn't getting that at all. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Okay. So I guess I'd need a motion to that effect from council. Staff.
So yeah, I'd like to make the motion that we proceed with the 3 remaining roads. Marchand Lane being number 1, Sampson Road being second, and then reach out to see if it's an option for the Lobster Plant Road to become a 3-way
Okay.
invest. I don't know if it's an investment or
Yeah, project, yeah.
Yeah.
project.
Okay, great. Okay, so the motion's been made by Councillor Digdon. Could I have a seconder on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Brent Sampson. Any further discussion?
Madam
Oh,
Warden,
yeah,
if I
sorry.
may, just
Go
for
ahead.
clarity as well, if we reach out and they say, no, it's not an option, do we have the power to withdraw Lobster Plant Road from our submission for 2023? Because we're under tight deadline with this. I believe it's October 15th we have to have this in.
17th, yeah.
17th. So do we have the agreement of council that if they say no, that's not allowed, that we just proceed with Marchand and Sampson in that order?
That would be my thought. Or my,
Okay. Councillor Digdon's on board with that. Councillor Sean?
Yeah.
That was my question too, and I agree.
And Councillor Brett. I think we have agreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
And there you have it, folks. That wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and a big thank you to my interview guests this week, Janasta and Vincent Chesson, Jenny Pardy, Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, Amanda Mumberket, and all others who were involved in our coverage in any way this week. A special thank you to all those at Telile Community Television that were involved in the filming and formatting of our footage from Richmond Municipal Council, Callen Cowan, Nick Boudreau, and Becky Bourinot. If you have any thoughts on what you've seen over the past hour or suggestions for future shows, feel free to contact me directly or get in touch with Telile in Arichat. And don't forget to follow Telile on social media. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of Telile Community Television's very own Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.